everybody, and happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing, the video broadcast series that showcases the powerful women in engineering and manufacturing, starting from the shop floor all the way to the C-suite. This is episode 132 or 133. I can't remember, but it should be on the title. That's fine. And today's episode is sponsored by the International Society of Automation, or ISA, another acronym for you. And they have a special message for all of you after the show involving the week right before Thanksgiving. So stick around for that. And it involves a special sale, so you don't want to miss it, I promise. And then today, my guest is Lilian. I'm so excited to have her. She's an applications engineer at Entegris, but she is also the founder of Dear Women in STEM, which is a new podcast that I found out about on LinkedIn. And I'm super excited to have her here and talk about her journey. So Lilian, welcome so much. Welcome to Mavens of Manufacturing. Thank you so much for coming. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good. It's cold.
So
that's not fun.
Where are you located again?
So I'm in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah. That gets colder, I think. You guys get a lot more snow than we do in the Midwest, but we get that face freezing.
I know that's not fun.
I'm not happy about it at all. Like I have friends who are in the South and friends that live in Texas, and they're having 80-degree weather this weekend, and I'm super jealous about it. But I do want to mention too that if anyone is tuning in live, please drop in your comments. We already have Angela, who is part of the WEMO chapter in Texas. So Angela, thank you for joining us. And if you guys have questions with Lilian as we progress with our conversation, please don't be afraid to drop those in the comments section and I'll pull them up. But Lilian, let's get started with your story. So can you tell us how you got involved with this amazing sector and how it led you to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just want to start by saying you are someone that I truly admire. You stumbled on my page. I was recently talking to a friend of mine and I was saying how important it is to, support each other. At least with women, it's really important to support each other, at least in the STEM space. And I was telling her how you reached out to me and we just started communicating and how you've been able to connect with me with so many other women in the same space doing similar things that can help support me in what I want to do as well. So thank you for everything that you do. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. So no problem. You're welcome. I'm originally from Ghana in West Africa, and I relocated to the United States in 2011 for college. And I came here purposely to study chemical engineering, right? That was my goal. And it was a privilege for me to be able to, embark on this journey to pursue higher education outside of Ghana. Because one, it's expensive and it's not something that everyone has access to. So luckily for me, I started off in Florida Institute of Technology for Chemical Engineering. And, I coming in as an international student, it was, I experienced culture shock. I was thousands of miles away from my family and had to adjust and, just deal with all that. So it was a lot of adjustment that had to happen during that time. But I primarily wanted to study engineering because I found myself really strong, performing really well in classes like maths and science, which I think is like the general consensus for everyone else that you ask, like, how did you end up in engineering, And so the two paths I wanted to take were either engineering or actuarial science. Actually, that was the alternative for me. So I started with chemical engineering, and a year and a half into my journey in Florida, I started failing my classes. And let me just let me just give you a heads up that this story kind of sounds sad, but I promise you it ends really well. So it ends really well. So I started failing classes, and these were classes that I knew I was strong in. I knew I knew I could perform in, but for some reason I was just getting F's in classes like chemistry, basic chemistry, Chem 1, Chem 2, and I was placed on academic probation in my second semester. And as an international student, when you find yourself in a situation like that, your you being in the country is tied to your school. So everything you do relies on your school. So if your school says it's time to leave, you have to leave, basically. That's how it works. And so it got so bad that
Okay.
I ended up being placed on academic dismissal and I had to leave because my grades were not performing really well. And that was the lowest point of my life and of my journey. And it took a lot out of me. But luckily, I think I was able to transition into a community college in Massachusetts, and I started
Okay.
all over again, basically in engineering science. And some miracle, my first semester I ended up on the dean's list. I got all A's. I don't know what turned around. I don't know what was different, but yeah, things just started turning around. And then on that journey, when I finished and I got my associate's degree, I
Mm-hmm.
embarked on the journey to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to continue on the chemical engineering path or I wanted to explore something else. Because after experiencing the failure, I started questioning whether I really was meant to be in STEM, in general. So
Mm-hmm.
I went on a campus tour and I stumbled into plastics engineering. And yeah, let me just end there. I don't know if you have follow-up questions for that.
Yeah. So, how did you find? So, you come from Ghana
Hmm.
and you have this huge culture shock, which
Hmm.
I would be deathly afraid of if that was me, because I'm more of an introvert. So, I admire that you came here and you were able to like keep moving forward with that. But I totally get the academic probation, because that's what happened to me when I was in college and I had to switch schools and figure out a different pathway from originally what I thought I was going to be on. How did you find out about the community college in Boston? Was that something you looked for on your own? Did someone recommend it? Or because I mean, I personally would not want to move out of Florida because it's warmer down there to a colder state. So like what was it that made you decide, yes, I'm going to go to Boston and pursue this alternative pathway?
So luckily, I have an aunt who is an academic counselor, and she was
Oh, okay.
working in the community college at the time. So I believe my mom had reached out to her, and she was like, "No, she doesn't need to go back to Ghana. This is an alternative. Let's give her a second chance." And she kind of helped us make that transition from Florida to Massachusetts. So I wasn't even thinking about the cold, the snow. I had no idea because Ghana is really hot. So when I moved to Florida, I was like, oh, okay, this is how the whole of America is. So, and I ended up moving in the summer to Massachusetts. So it also wasn't
So it was
a huge
nice.
transition. And then fall came and then winter came. I was like, what is happening? Like, so that
Yeah.
transition was a whole different situation. Yeah.
Okay. So then when you started your classes at Boston,
Mhm.
what was it about like plastics and stuff that really kind of fascinated you? And how did you switch from being a chemical engineer to an applications engineer? Because they're different, correct?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're different types. So what was it that triggered your mind to make that switch? Like what did you like differently about an applications engineer? And I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but
No, I understand what you're asking. Yeah. So I stumbled into plastics engineering. I didn't know
mhm,
there was a field that existed called plastics engineering. I was on a campus tour and I run into the dean of the plastics department, and he basically asked me if I knew about the program, and I said no. And he gave me a few things to read. And when I was reading
mhm,
about it, I just immediately connected with the program because it felt so applicable. Everything that the program or everything that um, we were dealing with were things that I could literally turn around and pick up, right? There are plastics
mhm,
everywhere you go. There's a plastic in everything that you do. So it felt more relatable to me than the chemical engineering that I had initially pursued because I realized that the chemical engineering was seeming more abstract to me. And so I immediately, like, I didn't have to think twice, three times about it. I was like, I want to do plastics. So I went through the entire plastics program. I was lucky enough to do co-ops and internships. So that also gave me that applicable side of it. So I was able to see what working in this industry could be like. And also the labs that I did in class helped me
Mhm.
envision what a career in this industry would be like. When I graduated, I started working in a rubber company, and it was an R&D group, and we were basically
Okay.
working with rubber. And the rubber we were working with are like, we were working on like a small scale version of how the car tires on your cars perform.
Okay.
So that those kind of things were just they excited me, right?
Yeah.
And then I transitioned to this applications position, which to me, I also stumbled into it. I didn't plan to transition into the life science field. So now I
Okay.
work in life sciences, which doesn't necessarily use a lot of my plastics background. But the good thing is we work with a lot of polymer bags. And so all the bags we work with are
Gotcha.
plastics. So I know what goes into making the bags. I know a lot of the make up of the bags, even though my portion of the job is literally like the application of the bag. So my day to day could be like carrying out like tests, putting together tests to evaluate the performance of our bag. So I could put together like a drop test to see how well our
Mhm.
bags perform next to competitor bags. I could, a variety of tests. So I'm more in the application portion of those polymer bags that we produce.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah. So it's been a whole
fascinating to me.
transition. Yeah.
That's so fascinating to me because, like, for one, like the plastics industry, they kind of get a bad name to it because plastics sometimes has a negative stigma
Hmm.
attached to it with
Hmm.
environment and sustainability stuff. But there's a show coming up called MPE. Please don't ask me what the acronym is because I can't remember, but that's coming up next year and I'm going to be there to speak and I'm excited about it. But just materials in general, I don't think people understand the amount of work and thought and problem solving that
Yeah.
goes into designing and creating different types of, like, even with clothing, bags, tires, like there's so much thought process that goes into it because they have to be durable, and then depending on the environment that they're going into, they
Hmm.
either have to be like waterproof or fireproof. It's just so much thought that goes into like the design of like different products. So it's just interesting and fascinating to me
Yeah.
to hear about it. But you do work for a company called Entegris, so I just wanted to kind of get a brief summary of what Entegris is. Like you said you make bags, but how did your journey lead to that? How did you find out about that company? And can you just kind of give us a brief background about it? And then I do want to dive into your podcast series because that's how we connected. So I want
Yeah.
to give more time to that. But can you just give us a brief summary of Entegris real quick for those who might not know what it is?
Yeah, no. So Entegris is mainly a semiconductor company. I work under the life science division.
Okay,
So the life science division is like a smaller section of the major Entegris semiconductor company
gotcha.
that has been there for a longer time. Life science is really small. And my job mainly as an applications engineer, like I explained earlier, is to basically work on evaluating the performance of our bags. For example, I do a lot of problem solving. I do a lot of test method development. I work with customers to try to help problem solve if there are any issues with the bags that they purchase on our end. And so it's like a whole like I love doing what I do because it's never the same every single day. And there are days where I spend my entire day just working on papers. There are days where I'm in the lab. There are days where I'm doing a combination of the two.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When you're working on papers, are you writing the
Yeah.
papers?
Yeah.
Okay. That's funny because I heard one of my mom's friends said that a lot of her kids became engineers because they didn't want to do
Yeah.
paper writing. And I was like, wait a minute. They have to write something at some point. And they're like, they don't do a lot of writing. And I was like, that's interesting to me, but I think it's
I
just
know.
kind of
I did not and I don't think it's my favorite thing to do, but I find myself writing papers sometimes, but then I enjoy the balance it gives me sometimes because
Yeah.
I like being able to do different things. I don't think I can do one thing every single day, which is why I think being in the applications role is what I really enjoy, because there are people that enjoy doing the same thing every single day, and that's okay. But for me,
Yeah.
I want to be able to have the opportunity to do different things on different days based on what comes in my email. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. I saw a TikTok from a Gen Zer. She's like, why on earth would I want to go into corporate when it's the same thing 9 to 5?
I
She's like,
know.
I'd rather have different oddball jobs struggling to make money just so I can enjoy my life. So it was a funny video to watch because I've worked at corporate for a long time and I'm like, yeah, I can get pretty boring. I do want to hit some of these comments. We have DC here. She's saying hi to Angela. Thanks for
Hi.
joining us, you guys. I really appreciate it. And then DC is like, Meaghan is the best. I also admire her. I'm going to totally fangirl when I finally meet her in person. The feeling is definitely mutual, DC. Thank you so much. And then we have a LinkedIn user. I don't know why LinkedIn does this. I wish they would fix this bug, but if you could drop your name, my biggest regret was not leaving Florida sooner. I don't know why that would be a thing. I would
Maybe it was
probably
too
enjoy the
hot.
work.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little change of doing different things breaks the monotony.
It
Yes, it
does.
does.
Yeah,
I agree with that
it
comment. Well,
really
I do
does.
want to dive into Dear Women in STEM because I just thought that was such a cool podcast title because it's like you're talking to any woman that's in STEM. So tell us that story. How did that start? What was your main inspiration? And how did you come up with the title of it? Because I'm always a fan of like how people come up with titles of things. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in 2020, I've always been a very shy person. You might not believe it now, but I always would shy away from speaking and being out in the public eye. But in 2020, I found myself um yearning for a community of women in STEM when
Mm-hmm.
we were all shut down at home and everybody was on
Yeah.
Instagram and everybody was on Instagram Live.
Yeah.
So I found a number of women on Instagram and I started connecting with them and connecting on stories, connecting on ideas and different things they were working on. And it wasn't just women, actually men, and mainly women of color for me. That was
Mm-hmm.
my mission because I realized that I wasn't finding people that look like me in the industry. So because the plastics industry is so small, um it's even harder to find like more diversity in the industry. Like diversity in STEM as a whole is really small, so now
Yeah.
add another subset of plastics that makes it even smaller. And so in my class in college, I was the only female black girl in my class actually. And so I always yearned for that community and I never had that. And I realized there were times where um I needed to, I just didn't feel comfortable enough to talk to people about certain things.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things that I found scrolling on Instagram on my timeline one day and just seeing like all these girls that, were interested in STEM or they were sharing their experiences in STEM. And I was like, wait, I can relate. I was the same person a number of years ago and I have what they're looking for, right? I can pour into these people. And so I reached out to the connections I had made and I was like, I want to start trying to build a platform like you guys are doing. How do I start? And it literally just
Mm-hmm.
started with hop on this Instagram live with me, or I'm doing this panel. Do you want to sit on it? Or can you help me do this? And I remember I joined a team on Instagram that was doing Women in STEM Wednesdays. And we would just search the entire internet for women in STEM in different fields, doing different things, just to interview them, to amplify their voices, to share their stories, and to just highlight them, to also, help other women that may be watching find their community in those women. And so when I continued working with that team on that, I realized that even in doing that, there weren't a lot of it was hard for them to be as transparent as they wanted to. And for me, I think my entire brand is centered on transparency, because I
Yeah.
realized that when a lot of us a lot of us experience the same things, like you just said, when I was sharing the probation thing, you just connected with that because you've experienced something like that. But it's very hard to get people to actually um like strip down the walls they have to want to share those naked transparent parts with you. And so I wanted to build that community to kind of create a safe space to let it be like a diary style, so you hear me talking about my transparent journeys and experiences and stories, so you can connect with my story, or you can connect with something in my story, or you can connect with someone else's story that comes on the podcast, so you realize you're not alone, so you find a community within the people on the platform, so you are able to also not isolate yourself, because I realized that a lot of women tend to isolate themselves because they don't have anyone to speak with. And so I'm just trying to, one, help increase the number of women in STEM as a whole, increase the reach for plastics engineering, because that's my background and I really want people to also learn about it, but also get women to, be comfortable in being vulnerable and sharing their stories, and you know realizing that it's at this point, I feel like it's a rite of passage. Everybody goes through it, everybody goes through a struggle, and
Yeah.
it's not about putting your business out there, it's about you sharing and being bold enough to share in order to encourage or inspire someone else. And so the name popped up randomly. I think I got the name all the way in 2020. I wrote it down and I didn't know what it was supposed to be. I just had it written somewhere. And in 2023, I was just playing around in Canva, and then I remembered the name. So I started playing around with a logo, and that's when I decided to hit go on the podcast.
I like that. So have you had any like memorable guests on
No,
recently? Like,
No,
go
so
ahead.
for the first season, I just wanted to share as much as I could for about my own journey. And then next season, I will have more people come on.
I think that's interesting. So when I started Mavens, so I'm like you, I'm very shy. I'm very introverted. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and my sister Melissa, who's closest in age to me, she would always talk for me when we were younger. So growing up, my dad wanted to tell, like my dad would always tell my mom, we have to take her to the doctor. She's not talking. Like she's old enough to talk. And my mom's like, she talks. Like she talks around me, she talks around Melissa. Like she just doesn't talk around everybody else. And it was always because my sister Melissa talked for me. So she would always like interrupt me or whatever. And it just became a thing. So like with Mavens, I really wanted to do the interview style. So I didn't do all of the talking. So I
Mhm.
find it fascinating that your first season is you sharing your journey and talking. So what was the process like for you? How did you come up with topics for you to talk about? And how are you able to like
Open up.
have enough, yeah, how are you able to have enough information to go on for like 10 or 15 minutes? Because I find it difficult to do that. Like I still get weirded out when people are like, talk about yourself, and it's like, but I'm not important kind of thing. But it is important because representation matters, and you sharing that and being vulnerable, because that takes a lot of vulnerability too, that inspires women to
Yeah.
not be so isolated. So how did that process go?
Yeah, I think it's hard, and I don't think I have it figured out yet. Because every time I sit down to write out an episode, I go through the you've said this before, nobody wants to hear it again. You like I go through the imposter syndrome process,
Yeah.
right? But then there's always a voice that's reminding me that this needs to be shared. So I go through
Mhm.
I when I before I started the podcast, I just outlined all the things that I've experienced on my STEM journey. I had everything written down.
Mhm.
Mainly because I back in 2020 I wanted to write a book, So I started writing down chapters I started writing down the chapters for the book. So that's kind of how I went through being able to
That's
outline
awesome.
what I've been through in on this STEM journey. And it's obviously I can't capture everything in one episode or in one season, but the things that I always feel led to share every month is what I allow myself to share. So I try not to I try not to let it be scripted. I just try to
Yeah.
have like one or two bullet points, just have the title, and the title always changes because sometimes I start talking and then it goes in a completely different direction. There have been times where I've recorded a whole episode, I listen to it back and it just doesn't feel right for me to put it out. So I delete it and I start all over again. So I go through the process, but I believe in not having everything be perfect. Honestly,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not here to put
100%.
out a perfect podcast. I'm here to, put out something that is very um something that looks like who I am, which is not a perfect person. And so even if in the podcast editing you hear me repeating something or you hear me saying 20 arms in the episode, that's because like I'm human and
Yeah.
this is just me, so I don't want a perfect podcast. And there's so many podcasts out there that are interview style, which is why I really wanted to start with the personal part of it, because I
Yeah.
realized that most of the time people lose touch with the host and with with connecting with you. Because for me, it's at the end of the day, the core of this podcast is about my journey and my story. So it's kind of like my diary that I'm putting out there, but then my diary is connected to almost every woman in STEM, because there is something that I've experienced that almost every woman in STEM can connect to. So it's
Mhm.
our diary, but then the focus is my story, my journey. Yeah.
How has the response been from younger girls in Ghana? Like, do you have listeners there that listen to your podcast, or have they reached out to you? Because, like, that's why I keep going. I was doing an interview the other day and they asked, what keeps you going, like, during the tough times? And I'm like, I have little girls watching me that look up to me, and I don't want to let them down. And I want them to see, yes, my failures and successes, and I want them to know that they could get through it. So, have you had response from little girls in Ghana, and what has that been like, if you had?
Yeah, so I think, and it's not just specific to the podcast. I think since I started the journey of putting myself out there and creating a platform in general, that's when I started getting that feedback from the young girls in Ghana, or like hearing back from people from back home, right? And I think in all honesty, being in this position and having gone through what I've gone through, I initially struggled with the fact that there's a huge responsibility on me to give back, right? Even
Yeah.
before I actually had the desire to give back, I felt like I needed to give back because like I was lucky enough to get this opportunity, so I'm required to give back, right? And when I started feeling that, it didn't allow me to really share or really pour out as much as I wanted to. So once I was able to snap out of that, or be able to just get out of thinking that way, I was able to actually connect with the right people. I had a young girl
Mhm.
reach out to me once that I think she was in Denmark or something. And she messaged me saying she's been given a task to write about somebody she admires in a field. And I don't know this girl from anywhere. Someone she admires in a field she wants to go into. And she had sent me a message on Instagram. And I was like, wow, like I don't know how you found me. And that just really touched me. And that really reminded me that like even if I don't get like a million views or a million
Mhm.
downloads, that one girl seeing me and being able to identify and see someone who has her skin tone, share or like be in a position or be in a field that she wants to work in, that in itself is very inspiring to me, and that makes me feel like I've done my job, and so I think anytime I get that feedback, that also is the fuel I need to keep going and to keep going even harder.
That's so cool. Can you tell us about so I'm always interested in learning about the state of manufacturing or engineering in other places outside of the United States, because I'm hoping to do more traveling next year, but like how is it in Ghana? Like how popular is STEM career pathways? Is it something that's even pursued or talked about? Like what was that like for you when you were there?
So I left a while ago. So when I was leaving, it wasn't very popular, but
Okay.
because of technology and being able to, because I'm in contact with people there, and because of the platform that I have now, I'm aware of the fact that there's so many women in STEM there and so many young girls pursuing STEM or that have the desire to pursue STEM, because now there's so many programs, there's so many technical colleges, there's so many like it's growing there. I wouldn't say it's at the level of America yet, no, but
Mm-hmm.
then I believe that there is that desire for more access to education, STEM
Yeah.
education back in Ghana for sure. And I think that's
That's
why a lot of these platforms are necessary to be able
yeah.
to amplify or to be able to increase the reach of these things there. So yeah.
That's really cool. I do want to bring in some of these comments that are coming in. So Denise said, such a great need for single-use plastics in life sciences to prevent cross communication. Think of blood
Yep.
donations. That's really cool. And then yes, this is a great title for the podcast.
Thank
And
you.
it's Greg from CMM. I don't know how to CMMS radio. Got it. I was trying to read that as one word, so I was going to stumble over it. That's a great approach to episodes, Lilian. We don't want
Yeah.
perfection. Progress is what matters and being real. I think people I just like bloopers too. So like if somebody stumbles over something, like I think we need to bring laughter back into our lives too, because I just think bloopers are great. And then that is a fantastic perspective, Lillian. Well, I do want to ask you about your plans for like next year. So what do you have any big plans for next year? Who do you plan on maybe featuring on Women in STEM? Is there other things that you're working on? What does 2024 look like for you?
Yeah, so for next year, well, for the podcast, I'm looking to tailor it to a specific theme that I want to target. So next year, and this isn't final, but I'm considering looking into speaking with people, women in STEM, who have taken the bold step to pursue something outside of STEM, right? Not
Okay.
necessarily leaving the STEM field, but just to showcase the possibility of um let me backtrack. So the point
Okay.
of that is I most of the time, and the most recent episode I released yesterday or 2 days
Mm-hmm.
ago, I was saying how when you start practicing in a field, you feel like you must stay in that field for so many years, but then you have to transition at a point in time. And I think for a lot of people, they struggle with accepting that transitional period. And so most people have a desire to start a business, for example. Most people have a desire to maybe transition into a different field. So what I want to highlight next season is the people who have been able to transition into starting a business, not necessarily leaving the STEM field, either doing it alongside, or even those who have left the STEM field but have successfully pursued their other passions that were probably birthed from them being in the STEM field, or were always there but then needed that push from them being in the STEM field. So I want to target that side of um women in STEM. I don't know if that's too clear, but
No,
polish
I
it up a
get I
little.
get what you're saying. So I think I have a few people that I could
Oh,
introduce.
okay.
I think I introduced
I
you to
think you
Connor
connected me to
Branch.
one.
Cara
Yes.
Branch already
Yeah, you
for
did.
Black Girls Do Engineer. So she was a chemical engineer, and then she started the non-for-profit because her daughter came to her and said, "Hey, I want to be," I think she said, a computer engineer. And Cara's like, "Why?" And it was because she was watching her mom every time she came home,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
like representation matters. The other one is she works for Xeno Workwear. So she was
I
I
know
think she was
her.
she
Yes.
was an applications engineer, and then she started Xeno Workwear, and they just came out with a new line of boots that I'm like living for. So I might have to purchase that boot that she just came out with. And then
Yeah.
the other one is Allie G. Her background is chemical engineering as well too. And she still does PLC programming and system integration, but she started kits for let me back up. She started Kids PLC Kits, which is a non-for-profit organization. She started, I want to say this year, but it seems like it's been around forever because of how well she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll create these PLC kits, and she sends them out for free to public schools so that kids can start doing hands-on stuff with what we're actually doing in industry. So she's still in the STEM, but she just was like, why isn't anyone doing this? Like, we should
Yeah.
be teaching them. So all three are really good stories. It's just how fast each of them have been able to grow
Mm-hmm.
those separate businesses has been truly great, inspiring to see, because
Yeah.
everybody wants to do that. I'm sure they like stress out too, because owning your own business is not a stress-free
Yep.
zone by any means.
Probably not.
But yeah, I would love to introduce you to them. Did I not introduce you to WIM, or empowering women in industry?
You did. You did.
Okay.
I
If
think
I
I've had a meeting with one of them. Yeah.
Okay, if I didn't, let me know, because again, they have so many connections, and you would get so many guests from those organizations as well
You
too.
see,
So
I started this episode saying how helpful and supportive you are. I just got like
oh,
3 potential people for
big
for next season. So yeah,
that's
amazing.
awesome. Oh, and then yes, Angela said, and she's right here in Houston. Yep, Cara's in Houston. And then Jordan Yates, yes, she's
Okay.
creating soldiering kits for kids. So I can introduce you to Jordan as well too. She's phenomenal at video. So if you ever need like video tips, I don't know how she is so quick at putting video together, but she does a podcast for, I think, the oil industry as well too, the gas
Okay.
and oil industry, and she's up and coming, and she's doing amazing. So Angela, thank you for that tip. I didn't know she was doing the soldiering
Evangelist.
kits.
Yeah.
I know she's worked with Cara in the past and taught I say soldering like a Midwestern, soldering. Sorry.
I knew what you were talking about though.
My damn Midwestern accent takes over sometimes, and I'm just like, that's not what that word is, Meaghan. Stop being a Midwesterner and say it
Oh my
correctly.
God.
But she works with she's done some stuff with Cara as well too, because they're both in the Houston area. So
Okay.
yay, I'm super excited that we're doing this. There's another thing though too that I wanted to touch on, if you want to touch on it, but you're
Yes. I have 2 more things actually for next year.
okay.
So I also do, and I think I forgot to mention this to you. I also host a podcast for the Society of Plastics Engineers. It's called Plastics and Beyond. It is a diversity podcast that basically I interview different people, and the point is to help promote positive diversity education in the plastics industry. And so that's something that I think is on pause a bit. We're still looking for funding for, but we have 1 season out. So hopefully the next season we should have a season next year, hopefully. But
And
yeah.
it's for what organization?
Society of Plastics Engineers, SPE. Yeah. And then
I have a contact for you for that, SPE.
Okay.
2 for that. So I'll introduce you to those 2. And then
Okay.
what else? Sorry, I'm super excited.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no. So what you were referencing, the organization that I have as well, WEMO, Women Engineering Mentorship Organization. That's an organization that I put together. I believe this was 2 years ago, and the mission for that was to increase the number of women in engineering in Africa, but the focus starting in Ghana because that's where I'm from. And so we wanted to start off doing this by introducing them to engineering, creating workshops for them, providing co-op opportunities for them, pairing them up with engineering organizations that, so they can also get that hands-on or just learn about what life can be like working in a particular industry. And that's one of our initiatives, because that was one of my biggest takeaways when I did my co-op in engineering school. I really enjoyed that because I think that was what's really sold me on working in the plastics industry, being able to actually see what I'm working on and envision what a future in that industry could look like. And then lastly, we want to create mentor-mentee partnerships where they can shadow different women in engineering in the industry who can help encourage them or see them through, whether middle school, high school, even early on in their career or in college. So that's something that is on pause right now, but then we're definitely going to get it kicked off next year. So yeah, I have a lot going on.
That's exciting. Let me know how I can help with that as well too, because
I will.
I mean, there's a ton of people here that would love to learn more about that and help as well too. And one of my dreams has always been wanting to go to and visit Africa in some way or fashion. Like something is pulling me in that direction. So that's what I want to do. So if I can help in any way, and maybe that would be the opportunity for me to go, I would love to help. We do have some comments here. If this is Craig or Greg, I do say about you goofball. Thanks for making fun of my accent. It's worse too because I'm all nasally, so it's just funny. And then Angela said, and we're all part of WIN. So Cara, Jordan, they have a Texas chapter, and Angela's pretty involved with that. Okay. And then wow, Lilian, you're doing a lot of amazing things, and that will help set the future generation up in industry as a whole. Love it.
Thank you.
And then I do as well. So yes, and then I got to introduce you to Andrew Crow because he is phenomenal, and he would love to hear about that opportunity as well too. So I'll introduce you to him. But this has been such a great conversation, and I'm so excited for you, and I think you're going to do amazing things, and I'm so happy to connect you with whoever I can connect you with. But one of the things that I like my guests to do before I let them go, our audience is here, and they're all huge advocates for engineering and manufacturing because the skills gap is a real thing, and it's not just here in the United States, it's all over the place. And even in places like Ghana, STEM might not be top priority as a conversation, and it's starting to make waves and moves. And I've met a couple business owners who are women from Ghana at a packaging expo of all places, and they were there looking for new packaging items for the soaps and the jewelry that they were making. And it was really cool to meet them and hear their stories. So if you had one ask for our audience, like if they could help you with something or direct you somewhere, what would your biggest ask be for them?
I would say being open-minded to a lot of the things that I have going on, one. And I guess these are two things, but I think being I would also say I think a lot of the things you're already doing, honestly, like just connecting with the right people and supporting right now, for me, supporting the podcast because it's like my baby right now. And so just really supporting the podcast and helping to push out the initiatives that I have going on, that we have going on. And I think especially for Ghana, most of the things that we're trying to do right now is to make provision for more access for women to know more about the different fields of engineering that exist, and also to be able to create opportunities for them to be able to get into those spaces as well. So I hope that answered your question.
So I'm going to help you be a little bit more direct because I'm learning
Okay.
how to do this myself as well too.
Okay.
So one of the ways that a lot of people can help with some of these initiatives is by either through donations or sponsorship. So if you're interested in
Oh, okay.
anything that Lilian is talking about here, one of the things you could do is definitely connect with her on LinkedIn. But what are other ways that they can reach out to you and connect with you, Lilian? Because it's all going to start with a conversation, and some of these initiatives are going to either require donations, sponsorships, volunteering as a mentor or mentee for her upcoming program that she's hoping to start again next year. She might even need some sort of mentorship as well because she's moving along her career pathway journey. So if you're interested in all of that, please reach out to her. Lilian, how can they directly connect with you?
So my email address, the Dear Women in STEM email address would be the best way. I can send that to you as well. And then on LinkedIn would be the best. Those on Instagram as well. I'm on Instagram, engineer_Lilian. And social media, emails, those are the two ways to reach me.
Okay, so if you guys want an introduction to her directly, reach out to me. And I'll be happy to set that up for you. But Lilian, this was so fun and fantastic. And I'm super excited for you because I know you're going to do great and you have that passion. And please keep in touch with me because, again, I would love to help out in any way I can. And I'll send out more intro emails to you after this conversation because you got my wheels turning. You definitely got my wheels turning. I'm super excited about that. So
Thank you so much, Meaghan.
I think we have one more comment. Can you share her LinkedIn URL?
Oh, okay.
Give me 1 second. Angela, let's play some elevator music. Why I look her up? Because I did not have that up there. Because my video is funny if I have too many windows open. So give me 1 second. I'm going to keep talking until I can get it for you. I'm getting it. I promise. I promise. All right, here we go. I'm just going to drop it in the comments. So yes, connect with her, reach out to her, support her, because as she mentioned before, I kind of froze up there a little bit. That scared me. As she mentioned before at the beginning of our conversation, women supporting women is highly important, especially in this sector. So please support one another. There's not just one chair at the table for all of us to compete for. We have the ability to bring more chairs, build our own chairs, or build our own tables. So please be supportive as much as you can. Lilian, thank you so much again. I really appreciated this. And I'm excited.
Really appreciate it too.
All right. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Thank you. And please stay tuned. ISA has a really cool message for you guys. It's got a discount for you on something. So here's their message. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Thank you all.
Calling all engineers, technicians, and automation pros. Are you ready to take your career to the next level? Don't miss ISA's Black Friday week sale November 20th through November 27th. Save 30% on industry-leading trading, books, events, and standards. Get additional savings at the ISA merchandise store. The best automation deals are just around the corner. Visit isa.org/Black Friday Week 23 to learn more. That's isa.org/Black Friday Week 23.